Alright, so in the last video I kind of set up that we were moving, and you might have guessed it, we've moved and I'm sitting in that new space right now, or standing I should say, but we've been here a few weeks and the priority seems to have been setting up the living space, which I guess makes sense, but my priorities have kind of laid to the side, and you could probably also guess what those are, which, you know, my climbing wall is probably actually number one, and it still sits, you know, completely dismantled, ready to be put back together, which I'll show you how I took it apart and how I'm going to reassemble it in another video. But the other priority is my workspace, which is a little less exciting, but probably more important because I have to work from here, as well as I want to start editing videos again and getting back into the groove of things because I've been out of it for a while. So I figured I'd just start to talk about this new space and show you a little bit of it. So it's just a slightly smaller version of what I had in the last place we lived in, with one advantage, and that is that there's actually a secondary room. So although the rooms are a little bit smaller, I have two of them. So this room is kind of going to be where I can sit and make videos and talk and maybe do some tabletop shots or whatever I might need. The only disadvantage is that the ceiling height is quite a bit lower than the last place, so it's harder to put lights up, but I'm no pro lighter, so it should do just fine for me. So I'm pretty excited about that. And then again, this other space is going to be kind of my office slash, you know, editing area where I have my computer and all that stuff. So it's nice to kind of have two separate spaces to work in. So I'm pretty excited about that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's just get right to it.
So, in full transparency, this video was going to be different. I'd planned to make a video about our move, how our friends helped out, a frenetic but hopefully fun video. But as things always seem to go, it was a complete mess. Just like the mess of boxes and loose odds and ends you see, which will soon become my workspace. So over this footage of me starting to get a hold of things and set myself up, I'm going to fill you in on some of the show that was our move. Absolutely nothing went according to plan. In fact, the camera never even made it out on move day, and I probably aged about a decade in the process. There was a bunch of stuff that happened that made the move awful that I won't even get into, but we also moved in the middle of a COVID wave. Not great timing. Luckily for us, we had a bunch of friends offer to help. This meant that we could divide and conquer and have helping hands at both properties with very little waiting around. We'd planned to do 3 trips in a U-Haul truck, with the first load being ready to go at noon when we were supposed to get the property. While the first load went, the second load would be organized and moved out onto the driveway for the next pickup. All while this is happening, the last load of odds and ends would be packed and organized for the third and final trip. Well, noon rolled around and we never heard from the other party. Our calls were ignored and we were not given the combo to get the keys. In the meantime, we decided to keep filling the truck and make the first trip a larger payload to make up for the delay. Unfortunately, that was beyond the plan and those items weren't ready to go, so the super efficient use of bodies at 2 locations was already falling apart. After hours upon hours of waiting and eventually through lots of stressful phone calls that included lawyers, we finally got the keys after 6 p.m. when the majority of the free help, God bless their souls, had to leave. Upon arrival, the crew managed to unload the first truck into the garage and partially into the house. Then the truck returned to our old place, leaving whoever could stay to work on moving the items from the garage into the house. This way, the final load could go directly into the garage and finish off with an empty truck to return the next morning. With a reduced crew, my father drove the truck back with my friend Matt, who helped load what would be the second and now final haul into the truck. An additional friend, also named Matt, tagged in for overtime and arrived to help load as well. So at 9 p.m, Team Matts, Double Big Matt, Matt Pack, Matt Squared, whatever nicknames you want to give the multiple Matts, myself and my not so young anymore father, that means old, sorry dad, loaded this truck with lots of heavy stuff, including the aforementioned climbing wall. The Matt, who had been there all day, had to jet. He thinks he has a family and a life that's more important than his free labor, apparently. So the remaining Matt and my father drove to the new place, while I stayed to put a few final items in my car and do some cleanup. By the time I arrived at the new place, it was around 11:30 p.m. or later. I arrived to find my father with an artificial knee and 2 separated shoulders, emptying the truck with my 1 remaining soldier. This was the first time during the move that I'd actually been to the new place, and I hadn't realized that most of the help had to leave before the first load that was in the garage could be moved inside, so my father and Matt couldn't empty the truck anymore, and it was past their bedtimes, well, mostly my dad's, So we called it a night with a full garage and the better part of half a truckload, which again included the climbing wall left in the driveway to deal with in the morning. Luckily, the next morning, I had one of my brothers coming over to help me make enough space in the garage to empty the truck so we could return it at 11 a.m. Well, I woke up in the morning to find that he got called to a job and it was just me and what was probably several thousand pounds of furniture to move in a few short hours. In a panic, I started bear hugging cabinets, bookshelves, lumber, and whatever else remained on my own and dragged them into the house to try to make the deadline. And yes, this was only about 6 months after having a hernia repair. Not the best time for me to be doing that. Cue in Super Dad with his scarred and heavily worn anatomy, who races over to my rescue and helps move all of this stuff. Seriously, what a tough guy, and just what a guy in general. With some final objects scattered in the driveway, I stayed to move them in while he raced back with the truck to return it on time. I have absolutely no clue how we got it back in time, but he did. It doesn't mathematically make sense. Seriously, he must have been hauling ass, but yeah, he did it. Lesson here, kids, things never go as planned. Moves absolutely suck. Your friends aren't professional movers, but they are beautiful souls. So don't subject your friends to that crap and have cold beer on tap. Whoa, that rhymed. Point being, our move was a disaster. Our things were so disorganized and misplaced that to this day, I still don't know where a lot of things are. And this is why getting myself set up in this workspace would feel like a massive weight off of my back. And speaking of things not exactly going my way,
So as per usual, things are not really going according to plan. This room has all of these bulkheads that run along the entire space, and it's a bit smaller, so these posts up here that help keep all the desk shelving together, and that's how it actually all mounts, is actually a little bit too tall. So I'm gonna try to hack off some of this post, and hopefully that works out and I can keep going setting up this space. So let's do that.
And it would appear as if my IKEA hack, quite literally, worked out. And I could continue setting up my space.
All right, so here we are in the new space. It probably looks oddly like the old space, and that's because it's pretty much the same setup, but I can assure you this is a new room in a new place. And the only real thing I've kind of done to change it, which I'm sure you saw in the time lapse, is paint the room, well, both rooms, because this room was a canary yellow kind of color, and firstly, it was going to drive me crazy, and secondly, it was going to give really weird yellow bounce lighting, so I had to paint it something more neutral and something more me. And the other room was also like a beigey kind of salmon color, and that wasn't going to fly, so it also got a new paint job. So the space is starting to kind of feel like mine, which I'm excited about, but there's a lot more I do want to do to the space. The first major thing I have to do is try to figure out some type of sound dampening panels or acoustic panels or something, because the echo in this space is pretty pronounced. I'm sure you can hear it. And I don't think I want to put egg cartons on the wall like we did with the old space. I want to do something a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, especially if you might see it. And speaking of which, I also want to kind of do some decor in this space, so it's a bit more interesting to look at when I sit here and talk to you. So maybe I'll do a little bit more of an in-depth tour of what I've changed and what I've done when I'm at a place where I can actually do that. So this video, maybe isn't that exciting. Like I said, it wasn't really supposed to be this. It was supposed to be about our move, but things don't always work out, and I hope I didn't bore you to death. But I'm excited about this space because hopefully it means I can get back to editing more videos and posting more frequently. And speaking of which, the next video is going to be me reassembling the climbing wall. Hopefully we can show you how we dismantled it into kind of modular pieces. So hopefully it's easier to set back up again. And I also want to modify the wall slightly. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure you're subscribed. And if you didn't find this video absolutely, completely boring, please give it a thumbs up. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you did find this boring, I apologize. Hopefully the next video will be more interesting. So to keep this from getting too long, I'm gonna wrap it up here, but thanks for sticking around and take it easy and peace out.